All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for all for joining. I see quite a few people joined already. Yes, I see the chat. We were playing the video without audio, just while we were waiting for people to join. So we are here. Let me get straight into it. This is going to be a rather short session where we will just focus on demonstrating some of Karate's features, especially working in the context of Visual Studio Code. There may be time for questions, but we're going to try and wrap this all up within 30 minutes. Thank you again all for joining. And here goes. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Whenever there are demos involved, it's obviously a little scary, but we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. It's definitely going to be entertaining, no matter what. Today's agenda is a few items that I wanted to walk through in sequence and show you real working demos, actual API tests, making requests to existing services. And we have a couple of services for demo purposes that we are going to run locally. So you know what, let me get straight into Visual Studio Code. Here we are. And some of you already might be familiar with this, but the call out here is that you are looking at Karate's IDE support for Visual Studio Code. We also have support for IntelliJ, but today we're just going to focus on Visual Studio Code. As you can see, syntax coloring, autocomplete, there's much more that I will talk through, but everything that you expect from a first-class scripting language support in terms of IDE features is there. The Karate plugin, just make sure for those of you looking to get the Karate plugin from the Visual Studio Code marketplace, if you search for Karate, make sure you choose the one with the tick, the official plugin from Karate Labs. We have quite a few downloads already and a lot of good feedback. Please do keep the feedback coming. And let me get straight to the demo. So what I have here, and I'm sure all of you, I'm not going to go into details of the context of Karate, and I'm sure all of you know that it's an API test automation tool. What you see on the screen, and let me try and blow this up a little bit, is a very simple API test. We are going to hit this URL that is a public endpoint. We are going to actually post some very simple JSON, certainly assert for the status, which is a very common thing to do. But this line here, line number 8, is actually what Karate does really well, and one of the selling points of Karate, which is assertions, right? One of my favorite talking points nowadays is that automation is easy, but testing is hard, right? Which is, it's quite easy to write code to make an HTTP request. In fact, you can do it in any language. It just takes 2 or 3 lines of code. But the hard part is when you get all these complex JSON data back. And the payloads in real life, they can be really complex, nested arrays, objects within objects, and so on. No worries, Karate has this really mature, very extensible syntax for doing matching, or what people typically refer to as asserting. So this line number 8 is actually going to check that the payload contains this exact chunk of JSON. What we're going to do next is make a second call. And here on line number 10, what you're seeing is Karate's ability to actually sequence APIs. What we're doing here is that we did get back a chunk of JSON from the response. We're going to extract my key out of that JSON and use it as a path parameter in the next API request. So to repeat, we're going to chain 2 API calls here. Let's hope this works. In fact, off late, the second call times out. So if it times out, fine. We have a demo of a failing Karate test. So here we go. We are actually trying to hit a URL on the internet. And it looks like this is going to time out. Yes. I'm going to retry this. But before that, let me just show you the report. One of the selling points of Karate is that you actually see what happened on the wire. You see the HTTP traffic inline. So what I'm going to do is rerun this test, hope it works. If not, I have a backup plan where we have a web service hosted locally. So rerunning this, okay, internet, do your thing. Okay, that is, I think we've been doing so much testing on this as demos that this particular website has given up on us. No worries. What I'm going to do is switch to another test, which is simple.feature. This is a slightly more sophisticated test that does involve saving of response data into variables, which you can do in Karate. That's line number 12, saving a variable. And then response.id, which is now in a variable called ID, can be used as data to match or even pass to the next API request. Let me just run this. And I think when you look at the report, it's going to be clear as to what's actually happened. By the way, this report and this particular API test is a great example of a flow, right? This is what we call end user flow simulation in Karate API test, which is what you should be doing. In other words, if you see a team just testing one endpoint and then stopping the test, to me, that's not really a good representation of how your end users actually navigate through your system. Because if you look at what end users do, they typically sign in, that's one API call, you get a token or a secret back, and then you make account creation call maybe, and then you create an order and so on, right? That's a flow involved. And what you should be doing when you're testing APIs is actually simulating that flow. So in this case, we have the flow, we have the HTTP requests and responses as we expect. And one of the things I want to show you is the inline reports to what I was showing you till now was, of course, the HTML report that's built into Karate. One of the premium features, if you upgrade to the premium version of the plugin, is the option to actually see this very nice report. Let me blow it up for a moment, which is, yes, you see the same report. It's kind of in line with the ID. It's within Visual Studio Code. So the advantage is that you don't need to switch out anywhere else. Okay. And I think you're going to like this. This is somewhat new. Not many people know about this option. What you see in this option is in this particular view of the report, the inline report. You actually see all the API calls made as a consequence of whatever test we had running here. And this is super useful because you can see all the API calls made in one shot. And of course, you can dive in, look at the JSON, look at the headers, and so on, right? And when you have a post, obviously you're posting data and you can see all of that. So yes, the inline report is something that you would really enjoy if you choose to use the full experience that you get from the Visual Studio Code plugin. Okay, so I've just completed, getting started in less than a minute. About getting started, as I said, right, you just go to the Visual Studio Code marketplace. It takes you literally a minute or two to install it on Visual Studio Code. And let me call this out that one of the nice things about the Visual Studio Code plugin, as I was showing you here, is it is ready to run. Everything needed to run Karate tests comes along with the plugin, right? So you don't need to worry about installing Java or any particular runtime. It's all built in, okay? And yeah, I see a question from Vijay-Kant. Can you get this in IntelliJ as well? Not yet. We are working on it. It's a great catch that inline report's only working for Karate. So, I mean, the Visual Studio Code plugin. And it is something we are yet to roll out to the IntelliJ plugin, but it should be coming soon. Okay, so let me talk about parallel execution for a moment. And I also have this other test. Let me just run this quickly. It's actually another example of a complex flow as an API test. And again, I'm going to sound like a broken record here by saying that when you write API tests, you should really have these very human readable, right? When a business analyst or a domain expert in your organization comes and looks at your test report, it should make a lot of sense. And you can see one of the nice things about Karate is that the comments that you add to a test can surface in the report. So it gives you that great aspect of readability. And so you've seen two tests working. What I'm going to do is actually attempt to run two tests at the same time to show off Karate's ability to run tests in parallel. So I can right click, and again, this is a premium feature in the plugin. I can run both the Karate tests at the same time. And there it goes. Yeah, one of them is taking a little more time. This is actually not run in parallel, and I'll get to that in a moment. So it's actually run 2 tests, one after the other. And to actually get a sense of that, you can see this timeline report, right? Again, I don't know whether all of you have seen and observed this timeline report. Those of you who are regular users of Karate, there is a timeline report that can click from the summary as I'm doing here. And it shows the 2 tests actually ran one after the other. And the way that you can actually use the Visual Studio Code plugin to run tests in parallel is to use the what I've done here in terms of Karate command line options is to say I want to run 2 threads whenever I run tests. So let me repeat what I just did. Selected 2 tests, run them as Karate tests. And this time, I can see the thread pool is actually active when I'm reading the logs. And you'll see what I mean with the report. If this time when I open the timeline report, you can see that, yes, we ran 2 tests, but they ran actually side by side, right, in parallel. And this scales to n number of tests. In fact, Karate is one of the few frameworks that actually is able to run each unit of a test, which is a scenario, right? Each scenario is actually run on a separate thread. We have teams really loving this and able to crunch what used to run in the order of 15 to 30 minutes into just 5 minutes. And that's kind of pretty normal. And of course, one of the nice things about API tests is you don't need any complex infrastructure. Any normal Jenkins worker node is sufficient to run many tests in parallel. Okay. So what's next? Reusing as a performance test is fun. So let me spend a couple of minutes on that. And I already have an application running on localhost, which is where I ran my earlier test. And there is a user interface. I'm just showing you this user interface so that I explain the functionality of this application. This is a to-do application. You can enter to-dos and you can delete them and so on. It's pretty simple. Okay, I've cleared all the to-dos. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a particular API test, which is going to add to-dos to this application through the backend. This application has a REST API. We are going to call this REST API and add 2 items. One is called first and one is called second. Okay, so I'm going to run this test. It runs, it's all hitting localhost, port 8080 and so on. Now, when I refresh the UI as proof that the API worked and our test worked, we have these 2 items in the showing on the UI. Okay, now here's the fun part, right? Karate has this amazing capability where you can take one Karate test, which is this, and this is a full-fledged functional test. Karate can take this functional test and reuse it as a a performance test. What you're looking at is Karate's Gatling integration. Gatling tests are written in Scala, but the good news is that you don't need to write much. All you need to do is what I'm highlighting here, which is you need to tell Karate's Gatling integration which Karate test to run, just a pointer. And then you just say 10 users, and that is the multiplication factor, right? That's your load model. How many users do you want to attack your system with in parallel? And what I'm going to do now is actually run that particular Gatling test or Karate combination with Gatling. I'm going to use a Maven profile for those who know Maven. And when we kick off the test, you should be able to see on the left, the server actually taking in all this traffic. Yeah, there we go. The logs are busy on the left. And on the right-hand side, the Gatling test is just completed. Just to prove that, this test worked, if I refresh the UI, you see, all that data. So this should give you ideas because APIs are a great way to pump data into, all kinds of backend systems. And you can actually creatively use APIs, not just for testing, but for actually, setting up data for all kinds of things. In this case, performance testing, but the combination of API testing and UI testing is really an advanced subject. And I really encourage you to look at hybrid testing, which is something else that Karate allows you to do very, very easily. So finally, let's look at the Gatling report. And that is really a very nice report. I'm when a Gatling test completes, you get a link to an HTML file on the log. I'm cutting and pasting that into my browser. And there we are. That's the Gatling report. Has all the information you want, the P99, the number of requests per second, throughput, and all that. Brilliant. Let me talk about importing Postman collections. And this is one of the features that you get in the premium version of the plugin. Let me see if I can bring up my demo Postman collections. It's been a while since I opened it. Okay, I don't need to log in, which is great. We have a Postman test, which is very simple. It's a simple post to that same URL. And I'm not going to run it anymore because I think that URL is down. And the thing I want to highlight here for those of you who use Postman a lot is that we do support migrating, converting the pre-request scripts and the tests as well. So this is a big deal because we actually are able to parse the JavaScript, the kind of syntax that Postman supports for assertions, which is all JavaScript and the combination of chai and all that. It's a little verbose. And we actually convert that into Gradle. So I've already exported that collection that you were looking at. Let me open a new, let me open my demo project where I have already exported that collection. Postman, let's take this one. And you see this icon at the top that you see. If I click that, you actually get this option to convert that Postman collection to a Gradle script. It takes place immediately. As I said, the pre-request script is converted. And this is the conversion of both the status code assertion that you saw on Postman and the particular, the JSON matching that is converted to an equivalent Gradle, which is one line. It's kind of short and sweet. Gradle match syntax is pretty I like it a lot. Of course, I'm terribly biased. So that's about that. And I'll just mention the run modes that I'm talking about, Maven, Gradle. And if you see this icon on the left, which I'm hovering over, Gradle Pro, which is the premium version of the plugin, you do have the option to switch between Maven, custom, and bundle. It's kind of convenient. You do have the option to also go to the Visual Studio Code plugin settings and do it like clicking this gear icon and all that, which is a little more harder to access. So as convenience for developer experience, we have surfaced it in the activity bar itself. It's something you may want to consider if you really want to do, if you are a power user of Gradle. And let me show you debugging of tests very quickly because it's kind of a fun thing. Some of you may have seen this demo, but let me bring up this Google. This is a UI automation demo. It should work. If I click run, you're going to see Chrome come up. We are digressing a little bit from API testing at the moment, but all the concepts you see here obviously apply to API testing. So we just ran a UI test. Now we're going to rerun the same test by using a breakpoint on line 13. And let's see what happens. Okay. And as expected, we are able to actually pause the test, freeze the browser. And this is great because now as test automation enthusiasts, right, there's a lot of things we can do here. One is that we can actually type commands and highlight all the input fields, for example, right? You can do all kinds of things. You can even step back, which is something you can't do in most normal programming languages like Java, Ruby, Python, and all that. You can also go forward now. And what we're going to do now is somewhat special. We're actually going to change the data in the test, save it, hot reload. So we haven't restarted the test. And the moment I press forward, it's actually going to apply the changed data in the test. So let me repeat that in case you missed that, because this is really cool, which is you were able to go back in time. We did not restart the test. Just imagine if you had this very complex test where you had to sign in and do all kinds of things before you get to the real meat of your test and you're trying to troubleshoot something there. This is going to save you a whole bunch of time. This hot reload debug step through facility of Karate is really, really useful, especially for UI automation. And I don't need to remind some of you how hard UI automation is. And if you, in case you're wondering, of course, this whole debug support, being able to look at variables is something you can use even for API tests. If your API tests are quite complex, you would need this kind of debugging support. So that was about debugging. And the last demo I want to show, and I think we'll have 5 or 6 minutes for questions, is Codespaces. And I'm going to try and actually combine 2 particular demos. I'm going to attempt, I'm going to restart the Codespaces. For those of you who don't know what Codespaces is, it's you get the whole IDE experience of Visual Studio Code completely in Chrome, right? What you're looking at is a Chrome browser, and we have a Karate test. Okay, it's just loaded. This particular Karate test will use Sauce Labs to run a test. Okay, so the nice thing about this demo is that there is nothing you need to install locally. You don't need any Selenium, WebDriver, Karate, Java, Visual Studio Code, nothing, right? You just open Chrome. I've already opened a particular GitHub project, and now if I run this, it should actually use my Sauce Labs account and connect to Sauce Labs. Yeah, that's happening. And the first step takes time because it kind of provisions hardware on Sauce Labs, I'm imagining. And this is the same test that we ran earlier locally. It's running on Sauce Labs. Everything seems to be going fine. And as proof that this actually ran, let me sign into Sauce Labs. And yes, less than a minute ago. Yeah, as proof that that test ran in Sauce Labs, it's 1 minute ago. And here's the cool part, right? You can actually see a video of the test. And again, let me repeat, right? This entire demo using Sauce Labs and Karate for API, not API, for UI automation using WebDriver was completely running in a Chrome browser with no hardware or anything installed locally, which is pretty cool, right? In fact, some people believe this is the future of development, which is called remote or cloud development environments. So do look out for this. Karate supports this. The great thing about the Visual Studio Code plugin in Karate is that it works 100% in Codespaces, as you saw here. And for those of you who are fans of dark mode, let me show you that the plugin supports dark mode as well. So this may make some of you happy. With that, I think we have a few minutes for questions, but as I promised, this was a very short, sweet, lightning fast demo, just taking you through a few of Karate's key features for API testing. Yes, I did show you a little bit of UI testing at the end, but for good reason, because I wanted to show off the debug support of Karate, which really is a compelling demo when you show how it works in Visual Studio Code. Do we have any questions? This is the time. I'm happy to even unmute the mic for folks who want to ask a question, or you can put it in chat, but that's all I had. Okay, we see someone who's raised a hand. Yes, Vijay, go ahead.
Hi, Peter. Good evening. So I have a quick question. So in our project, we are using feature files for our API tests.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I couldn't able to select the breakpoint. Is there like, do I need to download the plugins or
Yes.
how it does work?
If you're using the Visual Studio Code or the IntelliJ plugin,
Yeah, I'm using the IntelliJ.
Yeah, so you will need to, there is a free trial, I think 30 days for the IntelliJ plugin, but short answer is this is a premium feature. Either you'll need to activate by signing into JetBrains and starting a trial, or you'll need to subscribe to the plugin, and only then would the debug features work. Okay. And of course, make sure you are on the latest version of the plugin, but happy to take this offline. There is a support channel for the IntelliJ plugin. So we can, discuss more there if you still run into problems.
Sure. Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Vijay. I see a question, Varun Chabra on chat. Apart from runner Maven command, is there a way to switch when? Unfortunately, no, Varun. I think, yeah, the ability to switch environments, as I showed you today, the ability to tell Karate to actually use multiple threads, and we specified 2 threads if you noticed. These are all features that are actually in the premium version of the Karate Visual Studio Code official plugin. But yes, happy to get any other feedback that you have on that front. Damien, thanks for your question on chat. It would be great to have official integration with report portal. Yeah, I agree that we're starting slowly. In fact, one of the things we are working on, I think X-Ray has already done a great job by putting out a page for a recipe for integration with Karate. We want to do that for all the other third-party integration options that we have, like report portal, Allure, extend reports, a whole bunch, right? Obviously, we are trying to prioritize as well as we can, but noted, Damien, let's see what we can do on that. But again, something for every one of you who may be interested in contributing to open source. These are great opportunities for us to get a little support from the community, because we are really tightly focused on API testing right now and making sure all the core features of Karate work. But we would really like to do more of this. Ramesh Yellapur, thanks for the question. Any formatting and syntax help? Yes, in fact, formatting works. That is possible in the free version of the plugin. You can do code folding. You get, I would say that, let me be clear that autocomplete, right? Being able to do IntelliSense kind of things. We're still working on some of the finer aspects of that, but those are things that are not in the free plugin. Those are the premium, those are available in the premium version only. Okay, so yeah, I hope that answers Ramesh's question. Looks like we are at the end of questions. I think I see something in Q&A. Raghav Reddy, how can we use authentication token to make a call to API endpoint? Yes, this is easy. Plenty of examples. I really suggest you ask the question on Stack Overflow, but if I share my screen very quickly and go to the Karate documentation, which is pretty comprehensive, and some of you know that, this yeah, authentication, configure headers, right? Just look for headers in the documentation. You will find exactly what you want. There are even examples, because this is a common use case, right? And if you're new to Karate, I wouldn't advise you to start with this just yet. Get your feet wet with the kinds of demos that I did today, which is all self-contained. But if you want to go to the next level with Karate, there are plenty of ways in which you can actually configure Karate to use the same authentication mechanism for every API request in your test suite. There's a lot in the documentation on this. My advice is please look out for it. And if you have questions, please use Stack Overflow, because there's a big community out there who's helping you, helping us answer these questions. Great. I think that's it. We can close now. Thank you all for joining again. I'm glad we were able to end on time. As I said, Stack Overflow is one way to reach us. Else, we have our website. You can use our website to actually submit a contact form, and we can reach out to you if you have any specific needs around support or training, consulting, and so on. Thank you all, and have a good day and happy testing.